InvestorIdeas.com Podcasts.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com Podcasts. And today's podcast, we're going to be looking at a few public company announcements from KHRN Life Sciences Corporation, trading on the TSX Venture as KHRN and the OTCQX as KHRNF. Also looking at VIVO Cannabis Incorporated, trading on the TSX as VIVO and the OTCQX as VVCIF. Looking at the VLNS Company Incorporated, trading on the TSX as VLNS and the OTCQX as VLNCF, as well as PCLO Limited, trading on the TSX Venture as PCLO and the OTCQX as PCLOF. So first today, starting with KHRN Life Sciences, who announced that the company has successfully exported its registered Colombian cannabis strains in the form of live clones to Europe. Now, this significant milestone represents the first shipment of medical cannabis live plant material to Europe from Colombia, and is expected to accelerate access to European markets as the company executes on its asset-light growth strategy in the United Kingdom and Germany. Now, through its EU GMP certified supply chain partners in Europe, KHRN plans to introduce branded cannabis-based medical products based on those already distributed by the company in Colombia and Peru. And over the last year, more than 13,000 written prescriptions for extractions formulated with KHRN's registered cannabis strains have been issued to patients in Latin America. And as clinical evidence mounts, safety and efficacy data arising from KHRN's wholly owned clinics in Latin America, it's expected to serve as a cornerstone of the company's European medical education program. Now, Tejinder Virk, the president of KHRN Europe, commented, "Our experience in Colombia and Europe tells us that doctors require solid clinical evidence to feel confident that medical cannabis is the right treatment for their patients. Now, by exporting our Colombian cannabis strains, we will be able to bring our Latin American extracts to European patients, resulting in wider choices for doctors and safer, more efficacious patient outcomes. Additionally, this import provides an opportunity to accelerate the speed to market, optimize our global diversified supply chain, and maximize economics." Now, KHRN's vertically integrated seed-to-patient business model is currently experiencing tremendous growth in Colombia, and to date, KHRN medical cannabis products have shown strong evidence as alternative treatments for ailments such as chronic pain, anxiety, insomnia, depression, epilepsy, migraines, and Parkinson's disease. And with the proof of concept now validated in Colombia, the company plans to build upon its success in new markets. So, again, this is kind of something I've been talking about for a couple of years now, of the sort of long-term plans of KHRN Life Sciences when you're looking at the global cannabis industry. Now that they're able and have successfully exported live clones into Europe, that's a big milestone for the company, and I do expect that this will speed up sort of their progress moving into different markets, both in Europe and other parts of the world. Again, the proof of concept that they have established in Colombia, when you're looking at the medical cannabis market in Colombia and Latin America, they are one of the most established companies in that part of the world. They've done a really successful job of focusing very aggressively on the medical market. Once there is recreational access as well, they will be well positioned for that. But now that they've really started pumping up their import and export capabilities over the next year or so, they're going to start to be a bigger and bigger player within the global cannabis industry. And again, when you're looking at the global market, companies coming out of Colombia, Latin America, companies coming out of Africa and out of Israel do have some advantages to their growing conditions, to their cost of labor, to their cost of plants, as well as to the overall experience of the communities in those areas. Again, people are well versed at growing cannabis within the Colombian area, so they do have a lot of sort of cheaper labor that actually has better expertise. And the same thing could be said out of Israel as well, and again, parts of Africa and a lot of other parts of Latin and Central America. So again, when you're looking at this global cannabis industry, which is starting to become more of a reality and less of a concept, some of these companies are going to have a much more aggressive foothold in the global market than a lot of these US and Canadian-based companies. That being said, looking next at VIVO Cannabis Incorporated, who announced recently that their Van Louvian facility in Nepean, Ontario, has received EU GMP manufacturing certification for Germany's Brandenburg Health Authority and the Landsmat for Aschbach, or the LAVG. And the certification takes effect immediately and enables VIVO, through the Abcan medicinal subsidiary, to export product for sale into European and other markets requiring products to be manufactured under the rigorous GMP standards. Now, at the same time, VIVO's German subsidiary Beacon Medical Germany GmbH received an import license from the authority to import medical cannabis flowers from Nepean to Germany and the EU. Now, VIVO's president and European operations, Andreas Sanders, said, "We are very excited about VIVO's receipt for GMP certification from the German Health Authority of the state of Brandenburg. This is a major step forward in VIVO's commitment to expand our medical cannabis business, and it will allow us to start to provide patients, physicians, and pharmacists with high-quality medical cannabis flowers in Germany, the rest of Europe, and beyond. And it's a significant achievement that will help differentiate VIVO from many of its peers." Now, VIVO wants to thank the dedication of the GMP team for bringing its multi-year project to this successful milestone, and GMP certification requires significant resources to achieve and to maintain. And the company is now working to achieve its first European sales at its Beacon Medical products expected in the third quarter of this year. So again, when you're looking at companies like KHRN Life Sciences, which I was talking about before, they focused on EU GMP certification almost right out of the gate. They've made sure that all of their facilities, all of their products, everything that's going out to the market and everything that they're working on is built for this global cannabis industry. And again, you are seeing this be a focus for many Canadian companies, less so for the US-based companies. They still seem very heavily focused just on domestic markets as opposed to international markets. There's a lot of reasons for that. The US recreational domestic market is extremely strong, and they really don't need to focus that aggressively on international markets at this moment. And again, there isn't really options to based off the federal restrictions based in the US. That being said, a lot of those companies eventually will have to adopt some of these EU GMP certifications and standards and protocols if they want to compete on a global cannabis industry. And again, that is more going to be an issue when you have federal legalization within the US and when you start to see federal legalization in other parts of the world as well. But again, you're starting to see, again, even Canadian producers like VIVO really making sure that they are well positioned to expand into Europe and into other markets. Again, everyone is kind of holding the European standard as the global standard right now for cannabis. And I do think that that's overall a good thing. Again, having good manufacturing practices, I can't see as a negative in any aspect. But it's going to be interesting to see, again, how, as this industry does become more globalized, how each of these companies is able to compete and where the price points start to change, and also where you will need, again, something like a KHRN Life Sciences had, and VIVO does have similar things as well, but having that patient data to support your medical cannabis products being brought into new markets is also going to allow you to get those products to market much faster and also to work with physicians in those new markets with a lot more ease, because they're going to be more likely to prescribe medical cannabis products that have been tried and tested by thousands of patients versus products that are just coming to market now. Next, looking at the Valens company, who announced it's entered into a custom manufacturing agreement with Experian Biotechnologies, trading on the TSX Venture as EXP and the OTCQB as EXPFF. A partner of the company has recently acquired Lift Foods Technology, and Experian is a licensed cultivator, processor, and brand builder with a portfolio of premium products. Now, under this agreement, Valens will provide end-to-end pre-roll manufacturing and product distribution services to Experian, the company's first custom manufacturing agreement of this nature, following the receipt of its Health Canada license amendment to sell dried cannabis products. Now, in partnership, Valens and Experian will expand the pre-roll offering for Experian's popular Citizen Stash brand, which is focused on providing customers the highest quality handcrafted small batch cannabis. We're excited to kick off our pre-roll manufacturing services with the commencement of our agreement with Experian and expedite the entry of Valens manufactured dry cannabis products into the Canadian market, said Tyler Robson, Chief Executive Officer, co-founder and chair of the Valens Company. Now, Citizen Stash is synonymous with best-in-class products, and we're proud to be chosen as a partner who can deliver on customized and premium quality products for the brand. Now, the terms of the agreement support a minimum of 2 years partnership with monthly minimum order quantities, and Valens and Experian are in continued discussions to expand the existing agreement to include additional product development and custom manufacturing services for a range of next-generation products beyond gummies, which are currently being manufactured at the Lift facility and pre-rolls. And there is, however, no assurance that any such deal would be reached. Again, Valens moving quite aggressively with their partnership with Lift, ownership of Lift. And I do think that, again, when you're looking at the Canadian market right now, companies like Valens, again, there's really only maybe one or two other competitors who are close to Valens operations. But companies that are focusing on turning your dried flower into next generation products, whether that be pre-rolls, edibles, extracts, etc., I do think are going to be the type of business model that's going to be the most successful over the next coming years as we start to see a shift in the overall sales of the dried flower market. Again, if you're looking at the Canadian market or the US market, dried flower still makes up a significant percentage of sales. But even in Canada, once you start having potential changes where you can have more local craft growers, the overall price of your dried flower is going to start dropping significantly. As well, the average consumer is going to start looking for these next generation products. Again, I've talked a lot about the beverages. That's a section of this industry that I think is still vastly untapped as far as overall potential. And I do think that once beverages become a little bit more well-known and become more consistent, and once you eventually have less dosage restrictions. So that's the biggest thing holding back the edibles and second generation products in the Canadian market right now, is that 10 milligram dosage restriction. Obviously, if you're a person with a high tolerance, those products are not going to appeal to you. And this is why the illicit market is still as active as it is today, is because, again, you're looking at what people want and what people are used to. Most people are at least looking for around 20 to 50 milligrams, and that's not too aggressive. I think that a lot of the early beverage launches that you saw in the US that were getting up to 500 and 1,000 milligrams is a little bit over the top. That seems like more of a medical access point as opposed to a recreational dosage. But again, once those dosage changes happen in Canada, you are going to see a much more dramatic shift towards second generation products. Again, pre-rolls already take up a significant portion of the dry flower sales. And again, once you start having all these premium craft growers, which is expected in the next year or two as well, where private retailers can start buying direct from craft growers, there's going to be a big shift in the type of flower that's available in the market. And again, your large-scale producers who are pumping out mediocre quality flower, that is just the reality. There are a lot of large-scale producers who have craft segments, and those craft segments are doing really well. But again, their massive facility, sort of generic bud that's going out to the market, it hasn't been well received really at any point. And again, once you have competition from micro cultivators, and that's accessible and easy, and those companies don't have to have this huge cost to start up, that's when you're going to start to see this huge shift where you're only going to really see premium craft flower on the market. And again, a lot of that inferior product is going to need to turn into something, and that's where companies are going to be going to VLNS. VLNS is obviously very well positioned to deal with almost all factors of cannabis products right now. And again, once they've started successfully launching this pre-roll brand, I think that they'll start getting more and more customers coming towards them, as again, a lot of these companies also start looking at the global market. If you're an Aurora, if you're a Canopy, again, even a VIVO Cannabis or a Freya, they're all looking at a globalized industry, and for them, their basic dry bud is not going to be very competitive in a globalized industry. Lastly today, looking at PCLO, who provided an update on its operations in Mexico in light of the country's continued advancement of legislation to legalize the use of recreational cannabis in the country. Now, on March 10th, Mexico's Chamber of Deputies voted 316 to 129 to advance the bill that would legalize recreational cannabis use in the country. And this follows a move by Mexico's health ministry in January to publish a much-anticipated legal framework for the medical cannabis space, including a provision for the import of medical extracts and products. Now, through PCLO SA, or PCLO Mexico, a joint venture with Mino Labs, a specialty pharmaceutical company and medical supply distributor based in Mexico, the company is now well positioned to become a preferred supplier in the country. Now, Henning von Koss, the CEO of PCLO Limited, commented, Mexican cannabis legalization has had several stops and starts since 2018, but in the recent release of the medical guidelines and on Wednesday night's vote to continue advancing the bill, the country looks poised to legalize and become the largest cannabis market in the world sooner rather than later. Now, PCLO Mexico is positioned to become a preferred business-to-business supplier in the country, backed by PCLO's broad extract portfolio, scale, and flexibility, and Mino Labs' long track record of success in this market. Now, Manuel Cosme Odabchian, the CEO of Mino Labs, added, for more than 20 years, Mino Labs has been a leader in the Mexican specialty pharmaceutical distribution sector. The interest among our existing customer base for high-quality cannabis extracts and value-added formulations has been growing as Mexican cannabis legalization has advanced over the past 2 years. Now, we expect significant demand when the market opens and are very encouraged by the news that recreational cannabis legalization will continue to move forward toward the April deadline provided by the Supreme Court. So, Obviously, distribution of cannabis products by PharmaCielo in Mexico will be subject to the approval of the TSX Venture Exchange. So again, looking more and more at this globalized cannabis industry, once Mexico becomes a legalized recreational market, that is going to vastly change the dynamics, especially in the U.S. Again, the U.S. market does have a very strong domestic market. There's no understating that. It's very real. You're seeing very aggressive sales within that market. But more and more as new countries start opening up legalization and start having access points to importation and exportation, as they start having larger grow operations, different operations out there, the U.S. is going to have more and more difficulty being able to catch up to this globalized industry. And again, they are really only hindering their own companies, as a lot of these companies, if they want to be able to compete in the globalized market, are going to have to start having the same access and abilities that other countries are giving to the cannabis companies. I mean, a Canadian company can get access to banking and funding that any U.S. company cannot. And again, they've been dragging their feet on the Safe Banking Act, the States Act, the MORE Act for quite some time now. So potentially, if Mexico does legalize, or have some sort of recreational market before the U.S., I think that could be sort of the kick in the ass that the localized government in the U.S. needs to get some of those bills passed. Again, as they do not want to start losing market share to Mexican-based companies. So hopefully that is the case. I mean, I'm definitely rooting for Mexico legalization before the U.S. I think that that country, just like Colombia, just like most of Latin America, deserves the benefits of legalized cannabis as countries that have been so heavily impacted by the drug war. So hopefully they do get this approved within the next couple of months. And if that does happen, again, companies like PharmaCielo, even KHRN Life Sciences, also has some active footprints in Mexico. And a lot of those Canadian and Latin American-based companies are going to be jumping quite aggressively into the Mexico market. It'll be very interesting to see how this impacts the overall cartel crime syndicates in Mexico as well, and sort of what difficulties Mexico faces. There's going to be a lot of global eyes on Mexico when and if legalization does happen this summer. So definitely something to pay attention to. And as you can see, many companies are very aggressively poised for that to become a reality soon. That's all for today's podcast. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated's CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.